Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. Holy crap, have we got an adventure of a lifetime to share with you today. We have a whole family of either they is or they're soon to be is millionaires, and they're big in the business world. They've done a lot of different things, and they're radio stars on the Brushwood Media Network. And they have shows, and we're going to talk about all of that and what they do. The first thing I want to do is introduce Eric. He's the I think you're too young to be a patriarch, but you're the head of the clan, as it were. And if you would be so kind as to introduce everybody, and maybe by pecking order, I don't know, maybe by bank book, whatever you want to choose.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin. It is an honor to be here. I really appreciate you having myself and my whole family. And as honorary titles go, I have been called a lot worse things than patriarch, probably in the last week. So I am Eric Woolman from the Real Power Family Radio Show. And with me, we have my wife. I keep saying of 24 years. She is not 24 years old. If you're looking at this, watching us live, no, she's not my daughter. She's only 2 years younger than me. And we have been married for 24 years. Some of our offspring, well, actually, all of them that I admit, are Devin, the 17-year-old, and Ethan, the 14-year-old. So what can we do? What can we say? What can we teach to make your audience's life better?
Well, first of all, I'd love to know, looking at your bio and looking at it, how did you, I know you and Lila started out on a mattress in a warehouse that ended up being a house, and then more, and all the things that you do. I'm curious to know, Lila, this is for you. When you were sleeping on the mattress on the floor in the warehouse, were you thinking to yourself, holy Moses, what have I gotten myself into?
Honestly, it was my idea to start staying at the warehouse. I told Eric it would be a little bit like camping, and he thought we'd be, able to use the extra money to fix it up, which is what we started doing. So it was not an easy life, but it was an adventure.
Well, that's what we're all about, is to have a great adventure. So you took that warehouse and you slowly fixed it up, and then you made it a very nice home, and that led to, Eric, what?
That was in the time of my life I guess you'd call it transition years. Everybody goes through cycles. You start for 4 years of high school, then maybe 4 years of college. I did 4 years of Army in between that. And my whole life, I was training to get into medical school. I joined the Army and became a medic, so it would boost my chances of getting into med school. I never doubted that I could graduate med school. I just didn't know if I could get accepted to med school. And then abruptly, 2 weeks before school started, I decided, I don't really want to do that. That was 8 years of my life that I had directed. And I went in search of what I should do with my life. Bounced around. I was working as an orderly in the ER, picked up a job making about twice as much as an anatomy and physiology teacher in a private high school. And by the way, twice as much was $23,700 a year. So that was pretty awful pay. And then I was reactivated after 9/11 and basically guarded the dirt stateside for another 7 months. And when that job quit on me again, and I just went back to reserve, and I only had 2 days a month of pay to pay a full month of bills, I decided, this whole job thing isn't working out for me, and I'm just never going to get another one. And I didn't. So ironically, it wasn't. I guess the time as a platoon sergeant in the Army was incredibly useful in leading troops and running contractors in my construction business. But it wasn't all the years of school. It wasn't all the medical training I had. It was fixing up that warehouse, taking it from a broken down warehouse to a home for my wife and I to live in that determined the rest of our life. And since then, we've done over 1,000 rehabs and had offices in 2 cities in Ohio.
Congratulations, by the way. Hey, first of all, thank you for your service.
Mm-hmm.
And did you think when you got started in all of this and you started going down this road that you had the opportunity or the thought, did it ever cross your mind that someday I'm going to have my own private plane?
Oh yeah. It wasn't at all that way, but my dad had a dinky little 172, and there's nothing wrong with the 172. That's where we all learn. And that is what made him happy. He owned half of this 172. It just so happens that I have like more than 4 of times that horsepower on my current airplane. And it's a lot more convenient to get, well, we're going to Las Vegas in a couple of days. We're flying out there. And it's hard to get over those Rocky Mountains in a 172. It takes a long time to travel. What is that? Around 1,000 miles or so from Ohio to there. So yes, I expected someday to have a small plane like that just for having fun. But to have a turbocharged, pressurized cabin class aircraft that I can take across the Rocky Mountains, yeah, I never dreamed that would ever be possible.
Well, congratulations on all that you've done, including producing 2 really cool young men. And I know that you homeschool them and stuff. Now, bear with me because I grew up in a different era. When homeschooling was brand new, it was you were by yourself and you had a couple of kids, maybe, or one child, and you were homeschooling them. There was no resources for you outside the home. I understand it's completely different now. You've got groups of people that homeschool, and you can all get together and you do stuff like that. Is that true?
Kevin, I know my wife wants to answer this question desperately, but I'm going to jump in before she takes over. As it turns out, if you don't know what you don't know, we're only 15 years younger than you. Well, at least I am. So when we got started, we didn't know about any of that stuff. Maybe Lila did, which is why I want to go first. I had no idea. I just made it up, and I'm like, I'm smart enough. I can get them at least through. I mean, anybody can get your kids through 4th grade. And we made it that far. And I'm like, well, I can get them at least to high school, and then we'll probably send them to school. And then I looked at what they were teaching in high school, and I thought back to being a high school teacher, teaching some of the most advanced classes you can take in high school, and remembering all of the teachers standing there saying, I can't wait to retire. I'd literally walk in, and they had this joke. These 2 old guys are like, would you like a cart? We're just practicing. We want to be greeters at Walmart. And I thought, man, you've been teachers for 30 years, and that's what you want to do next year? You want to retire and give out carts at Walmart? And these are the kids that I'm supposed to entrust, or the adults I'm supposed to entrust my kids to? So that was my look at and that was a pretty decent private high school that I taught at, according to the people that went there. So Lila, did you know about all these co-ops and stuff? I mean, we do now, but when we got started, we just kind of were winging it.
No, the only thing that I knew is that my cousins had been homeschooled and they loved it. And I knew that they had turned out really well. And you had taught at the high school with another lady that had homeschooled her son, and she had talked about it a little bit. So I knew it was a possibility. I just didn't know enough of the information. But every parent has all these, concerns. Am I going to be able to do this? Are they going to learn enough? Are they going to be happy? Like, all these questions come up. But homeschooling has been one of the best things we could have ever done.
And I am very thankful for it. Very thankful for it. Because we don't, like you said, we don't really agree with some of the stuff that they are teaching in schools now. I mean, especially now, how political are we willing to go on this show?
Well, young man, you got to speak for yourself. So You say what's on your mind.
We don't really agree with some of the stuff the school's teaching, especially to nowadays. I know there's a bunch of different stuff that they've been teaching, like math is, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff, but I'm not going to get too far into that. So I am incredibly happy that our parents decided to homeschool my brother and I would encourage the listeners to look into homeschooling. I'm not saying go and homeschool just because you hear it on the radio show. I would recommend to go out, research it, learn about it, and think of that as a possibility.
It is nowhere near as hard as you think. It does not take nearly as much time as you think. And trust me, the number one complaint that we get, or excuse really that we get, is, well, I don't know if I'm smart enough. Trust me, you love your kids more than anybody ever will. That is all the qualification you need to teach them.
Well, I will say that as a couple of teenage boys, I had them when I was a little younger, and they went to school and then they came home, and I don't know what they taught them, but it was a very unique experience. But you guys seem like you love your parents dearly, and you like the system that they've set up. You seem like you can still get out and you meet other people. I'm not going to ask the 14-year-old because you're just a little bit too young. But Devin, how's the dating life?
Interesting.
That's enough.
And from what I hear, although I'm not always I have better things to focus on a lot of the time. And from what I hear, modern dating is, shall we say, interesting and different than it used to be. According
to
Devin, he gave you a huge platform. If I were 17 again and I was thinking like you would, I would use this platform to ask one particular girl for her phone number just in case she hears it. But it's totally up to you. You know, wax seal some special letters and calls to her mother.
Oh boy, that's a long story.
Apparently, he doesn't want to say who he wants to go out with. So,
well, and that's in my life. Even though I'm older than dirt, one of the hardest thing was to go up to a girl that you had your eye on in a dance and ask her to dance. That was like scary for me, and it was, and so I never did that. So there, but it's congratulations that, and you're right. Dating has changed tremendously over the relationships and how they work and all that kind of stuff. It's all changed, and we talk about that a little bit on the show, and it's very interesting. Speaking of shows, I wanted to talk to you about, you've got this really cool show on the Brushwood Media Network. And when did you start that? And whose idea was it? And did the rest of you say, I think you're nuts?
Well, I assure you it was none of our idea. Go ahead, Ethan.
Well, we've been asked for a while because our family's been teaching for a long time. And we have been asked, I know a couple of times, I don't know, Dad, you probably were asked a while before I remember, but we've been asked multiple times, hey, when are you going to start, are you going to start a podcast? And none of us really enjoyed the idea of having a podcast or radio show or something along those lines. But
we definitely did not enjoy the idea of building a huge audience.
Yeah, because we can go on to a bunch of other people's podcasts, talk about ourselves. I mean, kind of like we're doing right now. Talk about ourselves, and they already have their audience built up. We can teach and make everyone's lives better by going around and hitting different audiences that are already built up. But it wasn't, we didn't really think, hey, let's go out and by ourselves and build up our own audience. It wasn't until we really started when we met Mark Victor Hansen, and through a couple of connections that he gave us to, we ended up meeting Gina Gardner, who had us on her radio show, which was
also on the Brushwood Media Network.
Yep. And all four of us individually were on her show, and they played those. I think they actually played played them a couple times. And the owner of Brushwood Media Company heard them and thought, wow, this is awesome. I really like this family. They should have their own radio show. And he ended up reaching out to us and saying, hey, you should have your own show. And because it's a radio show, so they'd broadcast us, and anyone who already listened to that radio show would end up listening to us unless they changed the station. But that gave us a start, because that's one of the things we didn't want to do, was build up our own audience. But if we already had at least some people listening to this show, which, mind you, there was a big amount when we started, that was a huge, benefit. Plus, he was offering us, not for free, but he was offering us the opportunity to start a radio show, especially with, what did we start with, like 1 million listeners?
By the end of the first month, we had 1.6 million listeners or listens. And it was kind of like writing a book. I always wanted to have a book, and this guy says, look, you got to write this book, pay me a couple grand, I'll get you published. And so we did it just so I can say I'm a best-selling author, and sold them for 99 cents on Kindle. Well, then Devin got the idea of writing a book, and he actually wrote a decent book. And that one came out. Yeah, if I can do it, so can you. So then we're talking to Mark Victor Hansen, and Devin gives him a copy of this book that he had written at 10, published at 11. And Mark says, this is incredible. You got to write a book with my company. And so the Mark Victor Hansen Library published Devin's next book, The Garage. Next thing you know, Mark is calling, and Devin's just having this great talk in the back seat. We're driving to a real estate function. I'm like, Devin, who are you talking to? He says, Mark Victor Hansen. I'm like, oh, his secretary? He goes, no, Mark called me. And so he's on speaker, and we talk for the next 45 minutes or an hour, show up really late to the picnic we were going to with the real estate people. He keeps calling and emailing back, and our book, Family Success Triangle, just kind of happened like, oh, and of course, when you write your book, Eric, I'll write the foreword for you. And my response was, why, yes, Mark, of course I'll write a book.
Yeah. And thank you very much, sir. Because you can wash the clothes or something. And that is really cool. By the way, Ethan, I have to ask you, you are an older person masquerading in a 14-year-old suit. Do you know that?
I've been told that a couple times, but I look at it, some people might think, and I've seen comments on social media about this, about you erasing your childhood, but I think it's exactly the opposite. I could either, Devin, you came up with like the perfect response to this. It's the,
why would I spend 20 years playing so I could spend the next 50 to 70 years working, when I could spend 20 years working so I could spend the next 50 to 70 years playing? Or maybe doing a little bit of working so I can make the world a better place. Either way.
But I'm already a kid. I have so many great opportunities that I can take now. If I take action on those and I get an early start, how much better will my life be in the future? A lot of people will say, I could have done this or I could have done that. Well, if I'm doing this as a kid, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. Well, if I can start 20 years ago, then that would make my life much better. And I'm still having fun doing some of this stuff. I enjoy being on the radio. And first off, thanks for having us on here. And I love doing things like this. I love having our own radio show, the Real Power Family radio show, all the stuff like this. I enjoy it.
What about Wednesday?
Every Wednesday we have a teenager takeover where Ethan and I do our own show. We leave the parents off the show.
Oh, that's going to be scary. But good. I'm glad you guys can do that.
But yeah.
Well, the first time Brushwood contacted said, hey, I think you should do a date, or they sent me a contract. I agreed to a half hour a week. Next thing I know, I'm doing an hour a week. By the time I got the contract, it's 5 days a week. 2 weeks later, they're playing me at 7 a.m. and then again at 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. Eastern and 7 p.m. Pacific. And they said, oh, well, your kids should do a show on their own. And I'm thinking, are you crazy? Do you know what my 13-year-old says, what will come out of his mouth? He's on the radio, totally unsupervised. And if anybody has ever heard of Teenager Takeover, I think we just called it the Kid Show, which is a terrible name. The only thing that I did in all of your, I don't know how many dozens of episodes you've done, just the two teenagers, I take full credit for naming it. Rather than the Kid Show, I renamed it the Teenager Takeover.
I'm not
'Cause I
sure
just
that we
have a
had a
door.
name for a little while, but eventually, yeah, you did come up with that name.
And I have never reviewed, listened to, or edited anything. I have no idea what they say. In fact, we're doing this on a Wednesday. Your Wednesday episode just came out this morning. I drove to lunch and started listening to it for the first time. You did pretty good on that. You got to quit saying hey all the time, Devin.
Hey, you
We've
know
all
what?
got that word.
Hey, Dad.
By the way, I just want to, before we get too far, Ethan and Devin, I just want to say you are two lucky young men to have parents like you have, and that they are invested in you and they've really taken it. And by the way, you're returning that investment in spades. We're going to talk about more investment and stuff later in the show, because I'm really interested to know how you can buy a house under 18. That would be something that I think could be useful to a lot of folks. We need to take a quick break and we'll be right back. We are with make sure I have a tendency to screw up people's last names. So the Woolwens family, and they're the real power. They're the real. She got the name wrong, so the name of your show is a Real Power Family Radio Show on the Brushwood Media Network. We'll be right back in just a minute. Don't go away. We've got lots more to do with this fine group, including finding out how you can buy a house when you're just a kid. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Positive Talk Radio. We're going to take a short break to tell you audio and music creators about our commercial affiliate, Lyric Vids, specializing in creating amazing and engaging lyric videos. Are you looking to promote your videos in the most engaging way, but you don't have an animator and an editor? Whether you're an artist, musician, or business with a message to share, our lyric videos are designed to hook viewers and amplify your reach. Go to positivetalkradio.net/lyric vids. That's positivetalkradio.net/LYRICVIDS now to get started. Welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. We hope you enjoyed learning about our affiliate Lyric Vids, who specialize in creating captivating animated lyric videos. Now let's get back to the show.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We've got a great show for you today. We got some radio professionals here, and one of them is 17 and one of them is 14. They've got their own show on the Brushwood Media Network, as well as Mom and Dad and their show. It's pretty cool what you guys have all done, and you're just a kid. Devin, I got to ask you, you're 17 years old. When friends say, how do you spend your free time? And you say, I talk to 1 million people. What kind of response do you get?
I'm pretty sure most of them don't believe me. At some point, I went from, I buy lots of real estate, I write books, I do a whole bunch of things that you would think are impossible unless I explained it for an hour or 7. I eventually boiled it down to, I do a bunch of crazy stuff, including but not limited to buying real estate. So for some people, I just simplify it. On the radio, I get a little more in depth because on here, I got to be a little more crazy and outgoing for people. Got to stay exciting on here.
I have an answer to that question as well.
I figured you might.
Well, it depends. We have a couple different types of friends, I guess. I'm still in Scouts. In fact, it's Wednesday today, so I'm going to have a Scout meeting tonight. But my dad also runs a winner's dinner with our inner circle and all of our friends there. And since, it's a winner's dinner where my dad goes and teaches about real estate, then everyone, they probably think it's kind of interesting that there are a 17-year-old and 14-year-old that own real estate and have been investing for a long time. But I think they get used to it and they start learning, how they can start investing. But for the more normal people, the normal kids that are my age, I don't think they know how to take that, really. I don't know if they fully believe me, but I don't really bring it up much. I mean, yes, I do it, but I just take some of the things I've learned, apply it there, and yeah, there's a couple different ways that it could be took.
This
So.
is my take. If you raise your children like we have, I keep thinking of the Hank Williams Jr. song. He raised his to be a businessman. Country boy can't survive. That's where I'm going. And I thought, well, why not do both? My dad's a dentist, and he takes me to the hunting cabin in West Virginia. I learned how to ride four-wheelers and build things. So why can't my children learn how to ride four-wheelers and hunt and fish and, build things out of chainsaws, which is our newest thing down in the place in Tennessee, and fly airplanes and run businesses and buy real estate? And if you can learn how to do that at any time in your life, well, why not start right now? Why am I wasting time telling you, if you take off on a train from New York City traveling X miles an hour and you have another train from LA traveling this many miles an hour, when will they collide? I taught my children that it doesn't matter. You'll be in the plane over top of them. And while you're at it, do the weight and balance for me. That's how you're going to learn your math. And when they said, well, you need to memorize these multiplication tables, I said, do you know what a capitalization rate is, Devin? He's like, no, Dad, what's that? I said, good. Let's figure this out together. Let's figure out the NOI, work out the cap rate, and then decide if we want to buy this house. And there's no reason that they need to be taught calculus that they're probably never going to use unless they're building skyscrapers. But an internal rate of return, now that might be useful if you own a business.
Well, it's kind of necessary.
Kind of. So, I mean, they can learn all the same math and everything. And when they get done doing that, kids know how to kid. Oh, trust me, they get out there, they can have fun, they can break things. They just get to do it in a much more constructively destructive manner. Like Ethan was learning his sidekicks when he bought his first 6 unit, and there was a bunch of water damage. That's why he got it so cheap, as 2 of the units were totally unlivable. And he got to go in and kick down a bunch of drywall. He thought it was great.
That would be a lot of fun if you're, how old were you at that time?
I was, I was 7, because that was my first deal. And I went in, we were in martial arts back then. And since I had just learned that, there was some old waterlogged drywall that needed to be professionally removed. So I got to have fun and practice my kicks and a bunch of other stuff. See, that goes back to the, some people might think I'm wasting my childhood, but look at all this fun stuff I get to do. Any of the dilapidated properties that have things that need to be removed, like waterlogged drywall, I get to do that, or I can hire someone else to do that. But sometimes it might be more fun for me to go in and kick holes through drywall, because we can do that. And then, I can spend time with my family, with my dad, learning how to put more drywall back up, or we can hire that out to let someone else do that. But I know in that same property, I got to spend a lot of time, many weekends with my dad, going through properties, learning how to put in floors, wire in outlets, I think we put in a couple kitchen sinks, cabinet, a bunch of different stuff. I get to learn all of that while spending time with my parents. I just saw it as a win-win.
Well, what's interesting about that is that most of the time, and in a lot of the friends that you have, their parents are spending all of their time trying to eke out a living.
Mm-hmm.
So they're gone a lot. And so they don't have the opportunity to develop a relationship, that the relationship that you have with your parents, God willing, will last for your entire lives.
I sure hope so.
Even though I had a cousin who's my age, and he had a 13-year-old boy, and he said it actually pretty correctly for his son. He said, I don't know what happened, but when he turned 13, he went to bed, he rolled over, and his brains fell out. And he didn't get
See,
the
I would
back.
never. My dad always said that. He goes, "You turn 13, you go brain dead." And you know what? If I ever say that to you, then I have every right for you to act like that. I don't give my kids permission to do that. I don't say terrible, derogatory things about them. I say, you know what? It's totally understandable. I mean, I have a degree in pre-med. Of course, you have all of these crazy hormones going on, and you're going to make decisions. They're not stupid decisions. They're just have no foresight. They are not very well thought out. So I also don't try and protect them. I let them get hurt. That's one of our big, a chapter of our book is dedicated to let them fall down. If you are there to be the safety net and you're a helicopter mom, you never let them get hurt. You're the dad that stands up to bullying. I probably shouldn't say this on the radio, but man, we need to make bullying great again. I'm not saying we need bullies in the world, but you can't give everybody a trophy. There can't be. Did you know that? I think they said 25 to 50% of children in school today have at least thought about committing suicide, and well over 50%, they just have no value or self-worth. Well, you can't give them a trophy, because if everybody is a winner, there can't be a winner without a loser, or you don't develop what it means to be a winner. And I think that we ruined that. I remember right before Devin was born, when I talked to the coach and I'm like, "Oh, your kid was in a game last night. That's great. Who won?" He goes, "Oh, we didn't keep score." I said, "Oh, I'm telling you, the dads kept score. So did the kids. So you can do whatever you want to make you feel great." But I didn't believe in it then. And now, after 20 years of doing this to the world, I think it's the most despicable thing ever. You cannot have a winner unless there's a loser. And until you have lost, you don't know how great it feels to win. So why would you ever get out and try harder?
And even if they do, if they maybe pretend or make up excuses that, oh, I was close enough, that, that counts. But nothing's enforced, nothing's celebrated because they don't keep score, then what's that going to teach the kid? That later in life, if they do decently well, if they do good enough, then they should be fine. But they go out and do everything halfway. What is that going to teach the kids? And like you said before, I think it was 1 in 4 kids were thinking about suicide, or at least have thought of that. There's a lot of problems, and this is another reason why I'm glad that you homeschooled Devin and I, because you could teach us what you thought was right. You could teach us, things that you thought were important.
Was I your only teacher? Devin, where were you last weekend? Just a few days ago.
Just a few days ago, we were over in DC at the Ron Paul conference, learning about different politics and things like that. And over the years, I've been learning from not just my parents, but also reading books, listening to podcasts, radio shows, going to events from some of the best minds in the world at whatever I want to learn. If I want to learn about a lot about business, Robert Kiyosaki, listening to him, reading his books. If I want to learn about macroeconomics, we had George Gammon. For precious metals, we had Mike Maloney, and there were probably hundreds of other people that I've been learning from all over the 17 years I've been alive.
You've been alive a lot longer than 17 years. Fess up. Come on.
As much as I like to think so, no, pretty sure 17 years. Well, maybe 17 and a half. Pretty close to.
I was going to say.
Let me tell you something. I got to take a break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about one of my favorite rules of life, and it's called the be, do, have. And I want your take on it when we come right back. You're listening to Positive Talk on the Brushwood Media Network.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. That's me. And we're talking to a great family here. They have got a radio show. They are also very, how do I put this? You're very progressively conservative. Does that make sense?
After everyone gets done changing the definitions of words, which we talk about all the time, I am very much a classic liberal, which is the opposite of what liberals stand for today. But liberal is from freedom. So if you want to call me a progressive too, sure. I'm maybe not in the political sense, but yeah.
No,
we
you
believe
can
in freedom. That's the big thing.
It's always about freedom. And by the way, you just had a commercial. Can I say thank you to your sponsors? At least I believe they're sponsoring you, but Covenant House isn't what we do. It's all about the next generation.
Absolutely.
Is that not the most important thing to propagate our species? And if you're going to do it anyways, why not start with your family taking all of the time? Is there anything more important than your own kids? And I think it's awesome we have organizations like that that are helping other kids to feel basically what I'm trying to teach mine, to feel loved, to feel safe, and to understand it's not a fair world. So you got to be tough as well.
And there are 4 million kids that are either homeless or they're in foster homes, or that there's all kinds of issues there. And this is, I will say it proudly, this is the most powerful country in the world. And we should not have those issues. We should be all working together to do better than that, so that the kids that are coming up now can fix some of the problems that we've created over time, or our parents did, or whatever. And it would be great. And hopefully people like you, Ethan and Devin, your generation are the ones that are going to be left with the mess that we've created for you. I'm sorry about that.
I frequently joke about my generation's gonna have to be the one that saves the world, because no other generation has at this point.
You know, I was listening to one of your shows, Eric, and you were not around in the late 60s during the Vietnam era. And I was. As a matter of fact, I'm old enough to remember John F. Kennedy's assassination in 63, and Robert and Martin Luther King. And they tried in the late 60s with flower power and the hippie movement and make love not war and all that kind of stuff, and it didn't work out so good. So now you guys have got another shot at it, and I hope that you will do, with the support of your parents and those around you, and like Victor Hansen, and Jack Canfield and people like that, who are, Chicken Soup for the Soul is one of the books, or one of their trilogy, not trilogy, but they have a whole
hundreds of them, I think. Yes.
Series.
Yeah, and it's also become now a catchphrase for now. It's like chicken soup for anything.
Exactly.
So you've had some really, really good role models, and that's really cool. Where did you hear Be Do Have for the first time?
I have absolutely. Oh, you know what? I've got the thing hanging right behind me. It was actually a twist of an army thing. and I'd have to look at an Army training manual, a TM, but I sat there and I wrote out probably 50 different sets of 3 words and tried to get the essence of what I thought was the most important in life. And I went over and over and over that and realized that a lot of it comes from my military training. Somebody told me it's not enough to be in the right place at the right time. You have to be the right person in the right place at the right time. And he also told me, or at least someone else told me, walk fast and carry a clipboard. They'll think you're busy and then they won't give you more work. So not all the greatest of lessons, but yes, I went in and I decided I have to be the right person. If you win the lottery, you're most likely going to lose it all. If you become a sports star and you're great at throwing a football, you can make millions of dollars. And if you don't have any financial education, if you're not the right person, you're probably going to be broke in 5 years. So you've got to be the right person first. And that's where I started with be. And then obviously, like I taught Devin all the time, you've got to do. It's not enough to want it or to wish you had it. You have to get off your butt and make it happen for you. You are the one that decides your mediocrity, Yeah. If you're going to be a success or a failure, I might not be able to say the word, but
you get to pick.
Show. You don't have to be a radio show host and actually know how to speak.
I'm living testament to that.
Yes. So all these feel like, but I don't know if I could write a book. Well, I knew I couldn't write a book. And then one morning I woke up and at 4 a.m. I had this idea in my head. And that led to, I always have a little piece of paper beside my bed. And then I kept writing. So I ran into the bathroom and I wrote more. And then I couldn't sleep. I had to get this idea out of my head. And I run downstairs and I start typing. And next thing you know, the sun's coming up. And it happened over and over. And Lila had disappeared. Her and the boys went to Boy Scout camp, and she was one of the scoutmasters. So I'm here alone for a week. And we came back, and I'm like, hey, honey, I guess we're writing a book. I wrote like the first 4 chapters while you were at scout camp. But we did it. We took action. We had to be the right person, and then we had to take action. And now we have all the benefits that come with what we did. Why? Because we did plant that tree 20 years ago. And is it harder for you now? Well, yeah. And it doesn't mean, like an article I just wrote, this kid who became Devin's godfather said, hey, Eric, is the wealth gap getting wider? I said, well, yeah, of course it is. But that's not the question you should ask. That doesn't matter. What matters is it easier or harder to go from poor to rich? It's never been easier than it is right now with all of the technology. Anybody with an iPhone can have their own podcast. I mean, we got TikTok stars and pro wrestlers becoming crazy famous. Anybody, if you are dedicated enough, if you go out, if you take the action, you just got to do it in a little bit different way. Just like I taught you, Devin. What is the main lesson you teach everybody in your books?
One of the biggest things I teach is be creative and take action. Go out, do things differently, and take action on it. Follow through. Do it all the way. And then you can make your world a better place.
You know, your dad is a brilliant human being. You know how I know that? Because he ain't the first one who ever has come up with that. The be do have.
I imagine somebody way smarter than me did.
No, and he's not way smarter. I've interviewed him several times. His name is Neil Donald Walsh, and he's written like 30 books. One of them was on Conversations with God, was on the bestseller list for 250 weeks.
Nice.
But he had the be do have. I don't know if you guys have been to like New Jersey, or Boston.
Boston.
Yep. I had a good friend. He's from Boston, and we were talking about, you got to be some, and then if you be something. And he said, oh, no, that's not the way it works. You got to do stuff. You got to go out and you got to, do stuff. Because if you do stuff, then maybe you'll get enough and you'll be happy and stuff like that. But if you don't do it, you can't be happy because you're not going to have it. That's absolutely backwards. You've got to be the right individual. You've got to be caring and loving and creative and all those things, as Devin said, for humanity, and to take it like you're not selfish in it. You want it to be for everybody. And then once you be that way, then you can do the things that will give you the happiness that you seek.
And Kevin, after talking to this guy so many times, when he started doing the things, when he started writing this book, was it automatically, I mean, was it just a bestseller as soon as he put his pen to paper, or did he keep doing the hard stuff even though he saw no benefit immediately, until eventually, after years and years of hard work, he became an overnight success?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Because he wrote the book and he used a yellow pad and to write this thing. And he never thought it was going to be published. But it ended up being, there you are.
Yeah.
And it ended up being published. But the thing is, and I want to impress upon you guys, is that I've talked to over 2,000 people in writers and actors and creative people. To a person, they will all tell me that it's intuition. It's learning. It's like you wrote 4 chapters and you didn't even recognize it. It just kind of happened. When we talk about the intuition of these things happening, great things can happen. And I don't know if you know a gentleman by the name of, he's way older than you. His name is Paul McCartney. Do you know who that is?
We know. Mom and I know who that is.
The name sounds familiar to me, but I don't know without hearing more.
He was in a music group.
Yes.
Sounds about right.
A rather large music group.
Yeah, a little bit.
And he was in the Beatles.
Oh, okay.
Okay. In 1965, he woke up one morning and he woke up with a song in his head. Don't know where it came from, but it was in his head. And so he went to John, who was his writing partner, John Lennon, who's no longer with us. And he played the song because he put some chords to it. And John said, I've never heard that before. So he went to his producer. I don't have any idea what that is. And so he ended up taking it as his own after about a couple of weeks. And then he put some lyrics to it, and then they put it out. That song has been covered well over 3,000 times since that song was written, that he didn't even write. If you ask him today, he'll say he still has no idea where it came from. But that song was called Yesterday.
That's a pretty famous song, children.
Yeah.
That's one. That's even that's a biggie, right?
Yeah.
Right there. And
the Beatles were so big, they didn't have any. There were no speaker systems. Can you imagine trying to speak to an audience in a stadium? And they had these terrible little speakers to make announcements. There was nothing like that. They had to invent everything along the way. They were really pioneers of music.
And even John Lennon wrote All You Need Is Love. They were all about taking care of each other and being kind and that kind of stuff, which is a lot of what my show's about. But you guys do that naturally because that's just who you are. Congratulations, Mom and Dad. You did a really nice job.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. You ain't done yet, but it's
no. I always was worried. Maybe it's because I spent 13 years in the Army, but after spending so much time, and I did my last enlistment, Devin was born. I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm getting out. I'm never going to be one of these guys that misses their kid's birth because I'm in Iraq or in the stand or wherever. I am going to be there. And people said, well, but you've been in for 13 years. You can't get out. I said, oh yeah, watch me. And I knew what was most important in my life. And then I made the stupidest decision. I was traveling around speaking and training, which it absolutely changed our life forever. I would not take it back at all. But I got that great opportunity to work with T. Harv Eker, teaching, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind is his book. And working with him I was in training to be one of his speakers and then assistant trainer. And then I woke up and realized, wow, I just spent 6 months out of the first year of Devin's life on the road. This is precisely why I got out of the Army. He's starting to get interesting now. He can hold his own bottle. So it's time to get out. And then I never knew if I'd ever get a chance to speak again. Because most people, if you say no, if you've got a break coming up, you don't get back in, really. And I never imagined one day Devin wrote this book and they asked him, hey, can you come speak? And he's this big, beautiful ballroom in Pittsburgh. And he gets off the stage there and I get a phone call and it's this guy from Indiana. And he says, hey, Devin's manager, can Devin come to Indiana and speak? I'm like, not unless you pick me up at the airport. He goes, done. How about Saturday morning? I said, we're coming in Friday night. I ain't getting up early. But I couldn't believe now my 11-year-old is out there actually speaking 2 states in the first week or week and a half. He hit 2 different states, neither of which we lived in. And next thing I know, I'm speaking with him. And then Lila, I don't know how you and Ethan started to come along, but we started getting on podcasts and we're promoting our book. And you were on Gina's radio show. So it's like your first one ever. And she had 1.6 million listeners. And Lila's on her first podcast in front of this massive audience. And I'm like, oh man, just don't mess it up.
At that point, you can't mess it up. You can't mess it up. By the way, I need to take one more 30-second break. And Eric, this is for you.
They have your eyes. They have your ears. They have your smile. Now all they need is a little more of your time. Make a difference in your child's life, because anyone can be a father. It takes time to be a dad.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. I got to tell you, we've had a really fun show with the Real Power Family. And they have the Real Power Family radio show, which is on the Brushwood Media Network, like this show is. We're on Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. and at midnight Eastern. And when is your show? Pardon me. I should know how to
Monday
talk.
through Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern and 7 p.m. Pacific. And then we got to every podcast. I'm sure you do as well.
Yes, indeed. Now you've got. I'm in hot pursuit of you because you have more shows up than I do in the archive.
Oh, hey, Ethan, it's not a competition, but it's only because I didn't know how to look that up.
Well, we just crossed over 200 shows, as I recall. So.
Yeah. Well, guess what? I have under Positive Talk Radio. I have 860 shows up.
Wow.
And under my independence report, because we're declaring our independence from hate, division, and fear, which is another show that I've done, we have 450 shows up. So
that's impressive.
Well, it's because I got nothing else to do. I don't.
It's so funny when somebody like you introduces us as professionals. We stumbled into this. Never, if you would have asked me, I mean, my mom asked me, what do you want to do with your life? And those parents always give you that BS about do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I'm like, I want to get paid obscene amounts of money to argue with people. And she goes, now be realistic. Well, guess what I do? I have my own radio show. So I get to bash politicians every day. As long as I bash them equally on both political parties, it is totally fair. And I actually, the most money I've ever made in my life is negotiating, which is kind of just a high stakes argument where you get paid if you do it right. And I found that if I help the other guy win, it really throws him off balance. And I can make just a teeny bit less in this deal. and they're going to give me every deal in the future first, which will make me so much more money. It's unbelievable. So that's what I taught my children. I literally turned arguing and making people happy all together. I put it together and made a career out of it.
It's called relationship building, children.
I knew there was a nice name for that.
See, the thing is, Dad, you even asked me that question. What do you want to do with your life? Well, it's kind of hard. The question you were asking is, what do you want to do in the next year or two? Well, that's a very hard question to answer. Where were we 2 years ago? We didn't have a radio show. We barely had book. Devin, you had your book out. I think, yeah, we had our books out, the Family Success Triangle and the Treehouse. But Devin, your second book, second in the Atlas Gold series, The Fall and Rise of Atlas Gold, that wasn't out yet. We didn't have a radio show. We were barely on podcasts. At least Mom and I weren't on that many. So it's very difficult to tell where we're going to be in the next couple of years. But I mean, that's why Devin, one of our recent Teenager Takeover episodes, the kid shows, is we related some of the things from Sun Tzu to business. And one of those quotes from Sun Tzu was, opportunities multiply as they are seized.
So you're having some up audio. Does everybody else hear that? And
Both of you.
I'm saying, in a couple of years from now, maybe I'll be broadcasting the first Real Power Family radio show. Maybe Kevin McDonald from Positive Talk can be my guest on Mars. I think that would be a good goal.
I ain't going there. They don't have any air there. Are you kidding me? It's like, why? I live in Seattle. You know why I live in Seattle?
No,
Snakes.
why?
Why did it have to be snakes? I don't like snakes, so we don't have any of them here. So
we have a lot in Tennessee. You can come down to our place in Tennessee.
Not a freaking prayer. Not even a little chance. Because I would need to stay in like a hotel with like 4 different floors so I could be at the top and stuff. So
yeah, we stay in a hotel. We'll call it that.
I got to tell you guys, it's been my pleasure. And the cool thing is I get to be on your show tomorrow.
Yes. Make sure you tune in, listen to our show, and we can have some positive talk with Kevin McDonald on the Real Power Family Radio Show.
You can find out
part of Brushwood Media.
Exactly. And see, my story is a little different than yours. I started out as a graveyard dishwasher at Denny's years ago, and then became a national sales manager, and then became a bus driver. And I'll tell you what, there's no. I implore you to get a job as a bus driver. That is the best education you're going to have about people you've never met before.
Been there, done that.
Have you really?
Yeah.
Well, good. And again, I'd like to thank you for your service, Eric. Is there anything, before we go, we got to wrap this up, but is there anything that anybody would like to add? And Ethan, I got an idea that you'd like to say something.
Well, firstly, I would like to thank you, Kevin, so much for letting us come on your show. It's been an honor to be here, and I'm excited to have you on our show in the future.
But tomorrow is the future for us.
There's always opportunities in the future, and the more opportunities you take, the more opportunities will appear. So take action.
And keep going and never stop and keep saying yes. Say yes to life and great things will happen.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And for everybody listening today, make sure you take the time and everything you've learned to go out and make the world a better place.
I wish I'd said that. So now I do have something in the closing that you might find interesting. So thank you, everybody. And we'll see you next time on Positive Talk. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin at KMmedia.